It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Where do you plan to live in retirement? Will you stay in your current house or maybe downsize? Who would inherit your house one day? These are huge questions, and I'll pose those in our Sunday morning show. Barry Watts of Springfield's Wealth Care Corporation is here with me. This is Ralph Hipp, and we'll talk you through the importance of finding those answers to help you feel more confident about your future. We're both glad you're with us for this weekend's Watts on Wealth. His number is 417-200-3500. Get that right out of the gate. And the next thing on my list is to say, hello, Barry Watts. How are you, sir?
Well, hello, Ralph. I'm doing really fine.
Very good.
We're halfway through February. We're plowing on through 2025. My goodness. I can't believe we're already this far into it. There's a lot of news coming out of Washington. I don't know if you've been paying attention to or not.
A little bit now and then, yeah.
You know, one of the things that Trump's talking about is senior citizens paying no taxes on Social Security. A lot of my clients are shouting joyously over that. I bet Ralph is probably feeling pretty good about that himself.
I would love that. Would love that, yeah.
Well, I'm excited about the really gross, careless spending that they are uncovering. And I hope that it's all the undoing of business as we know it. We'll find out a little bit more as time goes along. But I'm hopeful for what I see happening there. We're busy, of course, at WealthCare here in Springfield. Tax preparation season is in full swing. I don't really have anything to do with tax preparation. Compliance is not my area. I'm a tax strategist, but April 16 will come soon, and that's when we enter into the Roth conversion season. So we'll be talking with a lot of folks about that come April 16. But right now, we're busy helping people erase their capital gains from 2024. I had a client in just this week who had a $130,000 capital gain from some property that he had sold. And we were able to show him how to erase that capital gain and turn that $130,000 into tax-free income going forward. So that was a pretty exciting event. And those are the kind of things that we help people do at the Wealth Care Corporation.
Yeah, just another day at the office, and you can have your day at the office with Barry Watts, and it's 417-200-3500 right here in Springfield. Back to the house situation where we kicked off the show, Barry, for starters. We spend a lot of time on the show talking about ways to save our money for retirement, ways to then have income streams and create our retirement budget. This is also the big question, though. How do you decide when all that happens where you will live in retirement?
Oh, Ralph, I think that's an easy one. Where are the grandkids? Because it seems to me that most people want to live near where the grandkids are.
That's a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's probably not quite that simple. I would say that most of my clients stay put in the same house that they retire in. If they were going to make an adjustment, they probably did that when the kids originally left home. And so most of my clients stay put, but we have conversations about second homes and I do have some clients with houses in Florida, for example, and I have some clients who choose to spend January and February in Texas. And that's not a bad idea, by the way, down on the Gulf Coast, particularly this time of year. But I think most people tend to stay put. So you just have to give some thought to what you're going to want to do in retirement, what that's going to look like, whether you're going to spend your entire year here, or maybe you're going to spend the colder months in the sunnier climes somewhere.
And I want to get some survey numbers out to you, Barry. I know you love these, especially when they come from Washington. But there's a survey from Freddie Mac that says about 70% of us, 68% in fact, of baby boomers plan to age in place. They want to stay in their current house as long as they can. And the interest rate they got even 5 years ago, if it was 2.5% in 2020, they would want to hang on to that rate. So one of the factors to talk about why it's so important to talk through plans like that when you're helping somebody in the Ozarks create a financial strategy for their retirement.
Well, see there, Ralph, Freddie Mac is just validating what I said, that most people are going to remain in their current home. So that's apparently I'm on target with that. You know, there are a couple of things you mentioned, though, that I find interesting. You referenced interest rates, mortgage interest rates. Well, hopefully, by the time you're retired, there are no mortgage interest rates for you to worry about. Although I have any number of retired clients who still have a mortgage, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, particularly at the rates you were quoting. If you're down there in the 2.5–3% range and your accounts are earning, let's say, 6 or 7 or something like that, well, why would you bother paying that off? Now, I know there's an emotional reason to pay it off, and there's the grandpa taught me to have everything paid off principle, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But we tend to focus just on the economics, and economically, anytime I can borrow money for 2 or 3% and have it invested returning 6, well, then that's what I want to do. So that's just something to think about that I think is kind of interesting. As you think about retiring, one of the things that comes up, of course, is health. You said they want to stay where they're at, age in place, as long as possible. So that means that you're going to need to exercise more. You're going to need to be sure you keep your legs working. You know what I've discovered as an old guy? It's my hips. And I don't need hip replacement surgery. They just kind of lock up on me.
Man,
it's crazy. And so I do want to encourage people in this, though, Ralph. If you have saved well for retirement, use the money that you have saved to stay where you are most comfortable. And for most of that, that is in our existing home. And the problem we have, if you live like we do, Kelly mows 6 acres out in Rogersville, and we take care of 80 acres in the farm, and our ability to do the work isn't as strong as it was when we were 40 years old. But what I want to encourage folks to do, and what Kelly and I think about doing, is to the degree that you can, just hire the work that you need done. My mom and dad live on 10 acres out in the Republic, and they're 82 this year. Dad will be 82 this year. Mom is a year or so behind him, but they mow their own yard, and I'm like, they've got enough money they could hire their yard mowed. Well, they wouldn't do it the way I want it done.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I understand that. Sometimes my wife's out in the yard with her scissors in hand trimming the grass. That's not quite true, but I accuse her of that. So here's my point. You've saved that money for a purpose. Use it to stay where you're most comfortable. And you're probably most comfortable in the house that you're currently living in. And I think it'd be wonderful if you could stay there for the rest of your life. I hope that Kelly and I are afforded that opportunity.
Here's another one for you, Barry. Freddie Mac says 3 of every 4 of us, 75% of those baby boomers who are homeowners, will leave their current house or the proceeds from the sale of the house to the kids or family members when they pass on. Where would that conversation fit into the process in setting up a retirement plan, paying it forward on the house?
Well, certainly important to think about those things, and that fits into the estate planning section. And estate planning is step 5 of the 6 steps to retirement confidence that we use at the Wealthcare Corporation, the process that our clients all go through to help them think about what they want to do. So I want to encourage you to have your estate planning done, to think about what you want to do with the house. And I want to encourage you to give instruction to your children, that's assuming they're the ones who are going to inherit the house, about what you want to happen so they aren't burdened by the decision making. For example, let's say you die and leave your house to your kids, and your kids, sometimes they can be emotionally wrapped up in, well, that's mom and dad's house. And they can even be emotionally more wrapped up if that's the house they happen to have grown up in.
It's a shrine,
so
like a shrine.
It does become a shrine to their parents, and they can't bear to sell it. You need to tell your kids, hey, when I die and I'm gone and you inherit this house, sell the darn thing. Otherwise, you're going to have to put a roof on it. Tell them what you want them to do so that they aren't tempted to turn it into a shrine to you, because that is a very bad thing. We had that happen in my family, actually. My grandmother, my mother's mother, kind of turned her dad's home into a shrine, and it had a lot of lovely, interesting stuff in it. People robbed her blind because she would never let any of the family go in and touch it. So we just let all the burglars go through and get what they wanted.
Oh, goodness.
So I think it's important that you communicate to the kids what you want, and that you have your estate plan set up so that your property goes to your kids in the most efficient way and avoids probate if at all possible. And that's pretty easy to accomplish.
All right. Barry Watts and I were talking about some of the basic factors to consider before you retire, and especially where you're comfortable living in retirement. What are some of the basics, and is there any magic number? We always threw out, I want $1 million when I retire. Is there a magic number to count up if they've saved enough?
Well, of course, Ralph, there is no magic number. Recently, there was a poll of Americans that said the magic number was 1.46 million. So 1,460,000 was what you needed to retire comfortably. Well, that just depends on where you're retiring. I'm pretty sure if you're retiring in New York City or in San Diego, that may not be enough. If you're retiring down in Crane or in Lampe or maybe out in Fair Play, that's probably more than enough. So it's going to be different from person to person, depending on their lifestyle, their goals, their dreams, the things that they want to accomplish. You just can't do it that way. How much is not the question. The question, Ralph, is income. How much income do you want in retirement? And we take the income number and then we work our way backwards to figure out how much money we really need to have saved up and whether we have enough to do the trick. So don't start with the big number. I want $1 million. Start with the monthly number. We call it the sitting on the porch number.
Mm-hmm.
And if we know how much money you need to hit your mailbox every month, we can figure out how much your nest egg needs to be worth and whether you're going to have enough nest egg to do what you want to do in retirement.
Hey, and that number again to reach Barry, 417-200-3500. Even text the word visit to get your message in today, and text the word book for Barry's book. It's called What's on Wealth. Get the book and read that along with our TV show and our radio show. Barry, kind of before we get to this first break and switch gears here, for the people who are saying, Marge, we're just burning through our cash way too fast here. What are some of the choices we have making sure we won't run out of money before we run out of life?
Well, maybe Marge is burning through the cash too fast. I don't know. But certainly there are things that can cause that to happen. Tax surprises are one of the big issues. People just don't realize the impact of taxes and rising tax rates in retirement, and the fact that if you've got more than enough money in an IRA account, it can actually cause you to pay extra taxes on your Social Security, for example. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is to evaluate, do a tax analysis, how much money they have in IRA, 401k types of accounts versus tax-free accounts like Roth IRA accounts and LERP plans. And here's the interesting thing, Ralph. If you're taking money out of an IRA, and it triggers taxation on your Social Security. If you have to pay $6,000 in extra taxes this year because of your Social Security, that $6,000 paid today will actually cost you about $30,000 in lost assets at the end of your life to your family. If you didn't have to pay that $6,000, you'd still have about $30,000 left at the end. And if you pay $6,000 every year in retirement, starting at age 65 until the time you die, for most folks, it's going to cost their family about $400,000 in lost assets. So it's all because they were paying tax on Social Security because they didn't know that they could avoid paying tax on Social Security because they hadn't met with us at the Wealth Care Corporation. We hadn't had the chance to educate them on taxes. Taxes are at the very center of what we do in retirement planning.
So take advantage of all the special offers from Barry Watts at Springfield's Wealth Care Corporation, Barry and his terrific team, to make sure you won't run out of cash. Don't burn through it too fast, and ways to hang on to what you've saved. So get started right away. Once again, that number, 417-200-3500. We like to, Barry, once in a while, what did it cost? And we're talking about stamps today. How many of you still mail your bills to where you write the check and mail the bill? Well, the stamp in 1975, 50 years ago, was 20 cents. 2005 was around 40 cents. And these days, Barry, a first class, I hope it's a forever stamp, 73 cents. Wow, those have really gone up.
Well, on top of that, if you live in Southwest Missouri, the Postal Service probably won't deliver the mail anyway.
We've heard about
I'm hearing a lot of complaints on that yesterday. In fact, earlier this week, I had a client in the office. He was telling me, I reached out to Congressman Burleson, sent him a text, or no, not a text, an email. And I haven't heard back from him yet, but I wanted to complain to him about mail delivery in Reed Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him not to feel all excited because we had the same mail delivery challenges pretty much all over Southwest Missouri right now. That's a place where the government's going to have to really do some soul searching as how they're going to handle mail in the future. It's not going to be able to work forever. So I suppose if you want to put something in the mail, just kiss it and hope it gets where it's going.
And of course, we all want to pay more and get less, don't we? No, none of us want to. Okay, yeah. Hey, Barry and I will take a break here. This is Ralph Hip with Barry on our Sunday morning show, and we'll get to our main topic of the day right after these messages for Barry. Don't go away.
Are questions about your financial future, such as, have I saved enough, or will my money last, keeping you up at night? Reach out to Barry Watts by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. Again, that's text the word VISIT to 417-200-3500 to schedule your consultation today. Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in What's on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through Wealthcare Asset Management, LLC. Life is full of uncertainties, but your retirement plan should not be one of them. Don't let market fluctuations dictate your future. Contact Barry Watts to secure your retirement today at 417-200-3500. Again, that's 417-200-3500.
Welcome back in. Watts on Wealth is the show. I'm Ralph Hipp with J. Barry Watts of the Wealthcare Corporation. When we think about the risks of retirement, we focus on the big dramatic market downturns. Is the arrow red or green, up or down, like we've seen in the past and we'll see again? Those are not our only threats. The looming possibility, especially 2026, our taxes will really go up. Persistent inflation, healthcare costs, all these challenges contribute to the very real fear that we will outlive our savings. So Barry, let's get back to it with our main topic today. With so many risks coming at us from every direction, how can we retirees around the Ozarks stay ahead of these challenges?
Well, Ralph, one of the mistakes that I see people make is they think retirement planning is all about investment management. And I'll even have people come in and sit down, and the first thing they want to talk about is how I'm going to recommend that their investments be managed. And I just need to tell you, that's not where the conversation is going to go, probably anywhere in the first visit that we have, because investment management is at the most 25 or 30% of the overall retirement planning picture. There are so many other things that need to be dealt with. And so the way we approach it is we have a 6-step process called the 6 Steps to Retirement Confidence. Investments are a part of one of those steps. But all of these steps culminate in step number 6, believe it or not. And I like to think of step number 6 as kind of like driving down the highway on a very windy day. You know, when it's so windy, you're driving down the road and there's a big gust of wind and you can hear it and your car actually goes sideways. Well, you better adjust. And it's those incremental adjustments that you make along the way with your retirement plan that make the difference. Because we can set your plan up today, but a year from now, there will have been winds come across your path. Winds of higher taxes, winds of health rate challenges, winds of poor market performance or great market performance or whatever it happens to be. And so we need to adjust to each of those winds. And certainly some of those winds are actually risk. And you have to have a plan that is adjustable to deal with it. And so that's really why I hate it when people come to me and they have all their money tied up, for example, in an annuity. And we see that a lot because there are a lot of people around town and across the country who are whatever your problem is, the answer is an annuity. And they just put you in an annuity, and whatever it is, you need an annuity. And the problem with that is you've given up a lot of flexibility when you approach your retirement planning that way. So we don't do that. We've got a 6-step process. We go through a lot of different things to consider. We evaluate not just your investments, but your income, for example, your risk tolerance and how much you've got it wrapped up in risk. We look at your long-term care expenses, what those are going to look like. And then on an annual basis, we sit down together and we review all of those things and we tweak anything that needs to be tweaked. That's the way to deal with risk, in my opinion, Ralph.
All righty. Well, we're talking about the twin threats of taxes and inflation. Taxes first. That's what the government says, too. Taxes are a huge concern for all of us, especially as our debt is soaring. President Trump, he's got most all of his people in place, and here we go. We're going to spend more or spend less. And how could this need to ultimately address our nation's huge debt problem, impact our tax situation in 26, and then affect our retirement income from then and there?
Well, Ralph, as a country, we owe $37 trillion.
Wow.
That's historic. The big deal is none of us understand what a trillion is. It's pretty hard for us to get there. And so there are increases that are likely. I'm going to guess that this time next year, we'll probably owe about $39 trillion. And the only solution for that is going to be to raise taxes. And so tax rates are going to increase. And I teach on this often. I was teaching this at a class at Missouri State the other day, and there was a guy in the back of the room who raised his hand. And he said, "Do you really believe that?" Well, yeah, that's why I'm teaching it. I really do believe taxes have to go higher. And I spent about an hour explaining to people all the reasons behind that. Primarily, it is government spending money that it doesn't have and the interest rates that the government's going to have to pay over time on that money that they have borrowed because they spent what they didn't have. And so when tax rates go higher, it can force us to make larger withdrawals from our savings account and our retirement savings accounts. When we make those larger withdrawals, it increases the taxes on Social Security. As I said, every $6,000 in tax that we have to pay causes us to lose over our lifetime about $400,000. If we paid $6,000 every year, it would cause us to lose about $400,000 at the end of our lifetime that we wouldn't have left to pay for long-term care and family. So what happens is these taxes and the additional withdrawals from Social Security accelerate the risk of outliving your savings. That's the real danger that we have to protect against, Ralph. And the good news is we're often able to take that dangerous wolf and back him up. Send him to the far side of the pasture and tell him to leave us alone. He's not welcome here at our doorstep. We're able to help our clients build a safety net that will provide them the income they need throughout their lifetime, and will deal with these tax increases in some cases by putting them in the 0% tax bracket so they don't have to worry about tax increases in the future. And that's a really sweet thing when we can do it.
Basically, Barry, what should we be doing right now to get ready for these possible future tax increases?
Well, I think, Ralph, number one, you need to get as much money as possible into tax-free accounts. Now, not everybody needs to do that, but almost everybody. Occasionally, we'll run into someone as we do the analysis to figure out whether or not they should put money into tax-free and how much they should put into tax-free. We actually discover in the midst of the analysis they should stay where they're at and not make those adjustments. But you can't do that if you don't know how to do the analysis and don't have the software and have the calculations in front of you. So I would encourage you to have a tax analysis done that shows what your taxes are going to be over the rest of your lifetime, each and every year, what that's going to look like. And the results of that analysis may indicate that you need to do Roth conversions, or maybe not. We don't know for sure. The good news is we are doing some Roth conversions today for as little as 6% in taxes. Can't guarantee that we can do that for you. It just depends on a case-by-case basis. But we had a $200,000 Roth conversion we did a couple of weeks ago for 6.7% in taxes, and that was kind of exciting. And I mentioned earlier that we'd had a client in this week that we were able to avoid $130,000 in capital gains that he didn't have to pay any taxes on. And sometimes if we can't make them work that way, well, then we figure out a way to pay our taxes using tax credits. Last year, I used a tax credit that paid my taxes for 60 cents on the dollar. And so instead of having to hand $1 to Uncle Sam, I put 60 cents in the tax credit, handed the dollar's worth of tax credit to Uncle Sam, and that resolved my debt to the government for that year. So these are some of the kinds of strategies that we use and that we would highly recommend that clients consider and evaluate. But the only way you can do that is if you have a tax analysis done, and that's what we do for folks at the Wealth Care Corporation.
And while we're getting into tax preparation, that's a totally different thing. Have a tax analysis done, hopefully with Barry at the Wealth Care Corporation, 417-200-3500. You know the number by heart by now, 417-200-3500. Even text the word visit today on this Sunday. Well, in this uncertain tax world we're living in, Barry, where Congress could change the rules at any time this year, we'll be watching the news for that. Planning for higher taxes is kind of like trying to hit a moving target. So how do you help your clients get ready for the challenges upcoming when the future of tax legislation in Washington and Jeff City is so unpredictable?
Well, Ralph, we know that in the future, taxes have to go higher. It's indisputable. Anybody who wants to argue with that just isn't paying attention to reality. And so taxes are going higher in the future. Now, there's all these questions about, well, will the Trump tax cuts be extended? Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts be extended? I don't know any of that. All I know is what the law is today. And so rather than acting on what we think the law will be, we act on what the law is today. And the law today says on December 31st of this year, that tax rates, boom, are going to go higher. It'll actually go higher on January 1st. So we've got until December 31st to do some things that will save some taxes. The lowest level taxpayer is going to see his taxes increase by 25% on January 1 of next year. So how do we prepare? Well, we analyze our tax situation and we then respond appropriately in the way that will allow us to pay the least taxes possible. You can't just guess. You have to do the math, and that's what we specialize in at WealthCare.
One of the misconceptions we have about retirement planning is that, with your 401k and things you've invested and your pension and Social Security, you're putting it into that nest egg. You put it in, and in retirement, then you start to draw it out. One of the biggest worries we have is that fear of running out of money. And a lot of us do focus on, hey, for the nest egg, I need my investments to perform well. So there's another factor draining our savings faster than expected, Barry. And can you discuss also how some really good tax-efficient strategies play a role in helping us retirees keep what's in our nest egg?
Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, Ralph, people over-focus on investments. They think retirement planning is all about investment management, and that's only 20 or 30% of the big picture. Investment and management and performance is important, but it is by no means the only thing. In fact, I think taxes and healthcare are just as, if not more important, and so you have to have a strategy to deal with all of those things. For example, when you turn age 75, for those of us who were born after 1960, and you have to start doing required minimum distributions, at that time you lose control of when you pay the taxes, the rate at which you pay the taxes, and the amount of tax you have to pay. You lose control. But today we have control. I can pay the tax this year or not. I can pay the tax at a lower rate, or I could take more income by doing a bigger Roth conversion and pay the taxes at a higher rate because I jumped a tax bracket. And when I do that, then I'm controlling how much tax I'm paying. So what I would say is we know tax rates are going to go up while we have control and some choice. Let's exercise that choice and let's control taxes today by making those decisions as a part of our tax plan for today.
Tax-efficient strategies. You can discuss more about it with Barry. Get with him at the WealthCare Corporation. Barry, we're about to hit the top of the hour. A little bit of news here. I do want to mention your book, Watts on Wealth. I did say earlier, text the word book, and anything about taxes in the book that we should really pay special attention to in there.
Well, Ralph, there is a chapter in the book that does address taxes, much in the same vein that we do here on the radio show. So I would encourage everyone to get a copy of the book. We'll send it to you free. All you have to do is ask for it. And we'll send you an autographed copy. It'll go out in the mail next week. You just simply text the word book, B-O-O-K, to 417-200-3500. 417-200-3500. Text B-O-O-K to that number, and we'll send a copy of the book to you right away.
And between watching our TV show, we're on all the Springfield channels now this year, listening to our Sunday morning radio show, going through the book and all of Barry's YouTube videos, you'll really have a good handle on your financial future with Barry, hopefully. So get with Barry and meet him live and in person at the WealthCare Corporation. All right, well, we'll stop for a little while here. Don't go far. Maybe you are working out this Sunday morning. You're doing your hour of exercise while listening to our show. That would be awesome. Barry said stay healthy. It'll help you out later on. But coming up in the next half hour of our show, we'll talk over the impact of inflation on retirement and why choosing that right financial advisor can make all the difference. So stay tuned. Right after this news break, Barry and I are back with a lot more Watts on Wealth in just a couple of minutes.
Worried about whether your savings will see you through retirement? If you're asking yourself questions like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement last? It's time to talk with Barry Watts. Simply text VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's text VISIT to 417-200-3500 and arrange your visit today. Life is full of uncertainties, but your retirement plan should not be one of them. Don't let market fluctuations dictate your future. Contact Barry Watts to secure your retirement today at 417-200-3500. Again, that's 417-200-3500.
Welcome back in this Sunday. This is Ralph Hipp, your host, along with J. Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. We talk about encouraging you to call and setting up your complimentary conference. Barry, let's start this part of the discussion before we get into inflation. We'd like to hold off talking about inflation as long as we can, but I want to get in a question for you about what kind of people can you help? And more importantly, what are the kinds of people that you cannot help at the WealthCare Corporation?
Well, Ralph, we can help most people, particularly if they have a sum of money saved for retirement. Now, we do our best work, I think, for people who have $1 million or $2 million or something like that, because there are so many things that we can do as their accounts grow larger. And so what we kind of say is, if you don't have at least $250,000 saved up for retirement, we're probably not going to be the place that can help you most effectively, because the tools that we use just require a certain amount of money to move them in the right direction for you. So the folks we can help best are folks who've got at least $250,000 saved up for retirement, $250,000, and who are ready for retirement, who are thinking about getting ready for retirement. You know, those people who are 55, 60, 65 years old, although we do see a number of people in their 70s who come to see us as well. We're getting more of those now as they're watching our television show. They're coming to see us. So that's kind of exciting and interesting. There is a client that we can't help, a person that we can't help, Ralph. And in order to set that up and help you understand, I want you to imagine that you're going to the doctor, okay? So you just get up this morning and you go to the doctor, and you walk in and the doctor says, "How can I help you?" And you say, "I need some cholesterol drugs." Well, what's the doctor going to do? He's going to laugh at you. He's going to say, "Oh, really? Well, why do you need cholesterol drugs?" "Well, I don't know. I've just heard they're good and I figured I should take some of them." "Well, don't you think we should check your cholesterol first?" "Oh, well, I think that might be a good idea." So sometimes, Ralph, people come in to see us and they don't come to go through our 6 steps to retirement confidence process. Instead, they come to ask for drugs, like we're a drug dealer. And the drug that they ask for, by the way, is an annuity. People show up. We had one this week. This is why it comes to my mind. We had one this week who showed up, and he didn't want anything to do with our process. All he wanted to talk about was annuities. He didn't want to talk about taxes. He didn't want to talk about long-term care. He didn't want to talk about estate planning.
I don't need all that.
All he wanted to talk about was annuities. And the simple fact is, we had to say to him, "Look, I can't help you because you just walked in the doctor's office and demanded a drug instead of telling the doctor what was ailing you, allowing us to do the discovery and then diagnose and prescribe properly for that solution." So I just need to debunk the idea that an annuity is the solution to everything. It's not. Now, I'm not anti-annuity. We have annuities that we use in our practice quite regularly. Many of our clients own annuities. They're a good thing used properly for the right purpose. But the people we can't help are the people who come in with a certain expectation of a product. We don't want the conversation to be about products. So you don't walk in and say, "Well, Barry, what investments do you recommend?" No, that's not the way this goes. Instead, we go through a 6-step process that starts with retirement income. How much income you're going to want in retirement, how much income you're going to have from Social Security and pensions, how much money you're going to need to take out of your investments to meet your income needs, and whether or not your nest egg is large enough to support you all the way to age 100. That's where the conversation starts. If an annuity is appropriate, that particular medicine will eventually be prescribed when the time comes, but we don't even know at that point whether or not it's appropriate. So I just want to say that people who have an expectation that we're basically like drug dealers and we're just handing out the candy that you want, if you would, please do not call our number. Go call someone else, because that's not what we do. We help people establish personal confidence in their retirement by taking them through a planning process that focuses on income, long-term care, what their health situation looks like, taxes and how to reduce those taxes, estate planning, and protecting their principal along the way. That's what is at the core of everything we think about at the Wealth Care Corporation.
417-200-3500 and see what things may be right or not right for you. All right, well, I guess we need to talk about inflation. And just a scant 3 years ago, 2022, Barry, inflation soared to a bit over 9%, its highest level since 1981, hit all of us hard. It's around 2.5 or 3 now, but especially for we retirees, it's more than just a pinch. It threatens our financial confidence on that. We think, well, I'll have less money and I'll spend less and the inflation won't hit me quite as hard, but it hits us harder. So what are some of the factors as to why inflation poses such a significant problem for us retired folks?
Well, Ralph, it threatens my confidence, and I'm not even retired yet. I'm still working. I mean, when I walk into a restaurant, what it just costs to buy dinner is breathtaking to me. And, you know, Kelly and I don't drink, so we're not ordering alcohol, and we don't order the most expensive thing on the menu generally. But the cost of living is getting rapidly out of control. And I think that's a severe problem for retirees. Now, during the years when you're working, hopefully you have pay raises to offset rising costs. But the problem is when you retire, the only pay raises that you get is the additional money that you withdraw from your retirement savings account. And so a nest egg that seemed sufficient 10 years ago when you first retired may today appear to be falling dangerously short because what it costs to live today. It costs 22% more today to live than it did just 5 short years ago. Now, at the Wealthcare Corporation, we had built into our plans in that 5-year period of time about a 15% raise in the cost of living. So we were expecting about 15%, but 22% is 50% more than 15. And you say, well, see there, that boy from down at Galena, he can't do the math because everybody knows 22% isn't 50% more than 15. Oh, yes, it is, my friends, roughly. Because think about this. The difference between 22 and 15 is 7. 7 is roughly about half of 15, about 50%. So to move from 15% to 22% costs you about 50% more. And so the thing about it is retirement sneaks up on you. The inflation sneaks up on you. People don't have it in mind. They aren't thinking about it. Oh, it's only 3%, not a big deal. And maybe this year it's not. But 3% this year, 3% the next year, 3% the next year, 4% the year after that. You get 4 or 5 years into that, and it's a significant piece of coin that's coming out of your pocket. You have to have a plan to deal with that.
We're talking serious money there. So those are some of the steps, and go on with more of the strategies that we can use to buffer ourselves against the effects of inflation, Barry.
Well, Ralph, simply this. Inflation requires your money to grow. And growing means you have to invest it for growing. And I just need to say to you, CDs and bonds just aren't enough. We had some clients in this week who brought in 4 different annuity contracts. There you go again. And these annuity contracts were paying 0.5%. They were earning 0.5% on their annuity contracts during all these years. Well, in the past 5 years, when the cost of living has gone up 22%, in 5 years, they've earned 2.5%. So their purchasing power of their principal is being eroded. So they're not getting the advice that they need. Now, annuities aren't necessarily the problem. You can get decent growth, maybe 5 to 7% tax deferred out of an annuity that is securing your principal. That can be a really, really good thing. But stock market is where we really begin to get growth that could potentially be in the high single digits and help us. We see oil and gas. I heard about an oil and gas deal recently. It was paying 12% so long as oil stayed above $60 per barrel. Now, I think there's a pretty good chance oil is going to stay above $60 per barrel, but it's not guaranteed. So there's risk involved in that deal. So there are lots of things we have to consider, Ralph. We tried to build plans that are bulletproof so that no matter what happens, the plans can flex and bend and make sure that you can take the additional income you need and make sure that we're growing your accounts enough to give you additional income to offset the rising cost of living. It's really incredibly important to do that.
Barry, and let's wrap this conversation up. Boy, this is really critical stuff on taxes and inflation. A couple of things. What do you think people around Springfield ought to look for when choosing somebody, hopefully like you, to guide them through all these challenges? And also, not only that, once they get together with you, how do you help them address the risks in preserving their financial future?
Well, Ralph, I think when it comes to looking for an advisor, one of the first things that you need to look for is seasoning. And I'm not just talking about salt and pepper here. Well, maybe I am if you're talking about their hair being a little salt and peppered. My hair these days is all salt. There's not any pepper left to it. It's been that way for 30 years. I'm white-headed, for those of you who haven't seen me. Recently, we had a person in our practice who came in and he got some advice from another advisor here in Springfield. And right up front, that advice cost him $75,000. I'm not saying he wrote a check for $75,000. I'm saying he lost $75,000 because he followed the advice that he got. It just vanished, vapor, away it went. So we stand in the gap and try to prevent people from making those mistakes. Right before you get to the bridge that's washed out, we're waving our arms saying, whoa, stop, don't go there. There's a better route that'll get you where you're going. And sometimes that deals with investments. Sometimes it deals with taxes. I think you want to be sure that whoever you're talking to is not only seasoned, but they need to be focused on taxes. If they can't and won't give you very specific tax advice and guidance, you're talking to the wrong person. And they should also be talking about long-term care and what the plan is for that and how you're going to deal with that. Holistic is the word I would come up with, Ralph, because what it means is we're looking at all the different things that may affect a retiree, not just their investment account, but all the different things like taxes and like estate planning. And like long-term care. So you want to work with somebody who is a holistic planner. And at the Wealth Care Corporation, that's what I was saying earlier about the guy who just wanted to buy an annuity. Thanks, we're not interested. That's not what we do. We do holistic retirement planning. And if you'd like that, call us at the Wealth Care Corporation.
And how about some risk analysis, tax analysis, portfolio analysis, and get your income plans together? And Barry can help you do all that under one roof. That number, 417-200-3500. And Barry, we appreciate all your wise Watts wisdom on taxes and inflation. So stay here with us.
The pace of inflation may change, but it never disappears. How might it affect your retirement nest egg? Get the answers by calling Barry Watts at 417-200-3500. Once more, that's 417-200-3500. Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in Watts on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through Wealthcare Asset Management, LLC. If you're pondering the longevity of your retirement savings with questions like, is my nest egg sufficient? Or how long will my retirement funds last? Consider scheduling a session with Barry Watts. Text VISIT to 417-200-3500. Again, that's text VISIT to 417-200-3500 now to set up your appointment.
Well, to close our wonderful Watts on Wealth show, Barry and I are stepping back in time, traveling to 1990 in our time machine. Here are some of the news and pop culture headlines from that year. The Persian Gulf War started when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the first President Bush with his strategies. NASA launched the Hubble telescope into space. Our Edwin Hubble, our Missouri astronomer, it's named for. Top films at the box office were Ghost and Dances with Wolves and Pretty Woman and Home Alone. 4 great ones there and many more. And on November 12th of 90, the concept of the World Wide Web was formally proposed by a guy named Tim Berners-Lee. Barry, first of all, 1990, any special memories stand out for you on those? The war in Iraq and Kuwait, the movies, the WWW, anything that sparks your memory?
Yeah, it does. It's interesting as you bring that up. I was going back to 1990. At that time, I was actually, Ralph, pastoring a church in Columbia, Missouri. And I remember we had a young man in the church who was going off to war. He'd fallen in love with a young lady there in our church, Everett Ice. From over around Kabul, and the girl that he took up with was Pam Losant from up at Wellington, Napoleon, up toward Kansas City.
So you remember all that? Yeah.
Well, I do. And he got called up. And so because he was in the reserves, he got called up and he was going to have to leave. And so suddenly he proposed to her and said, "Baby, I want to marry you." And he got called up, I think, on a Sunday, and Tuesday evening we had a full church, totally decorated wedding for Everett and Pam. So I remember that. And if you happen to be from over around Kabul, you may know Everett Ice or Pamela Losant from up around Wellington, Napoleon. It was fun. You mentioned those movies. Pretty Woman. I saw all 4 of those movies, by the way. The one I remember is Pretty Woman, and you can probably imagine why I remember that. By the way, that probably wasn't a movie I should have seen. And today that probably isn't a movie that I would see, but I did see it.
Did not get any ideas from Richard Gere on how to run his company.
Yeah, that just wasn't anything that I needed cluttering my brain. So I remember the 1990s. It was a different life and a different time.
Well, some of the financial figures, Barry, it's not all fun and games. We've got some economy and financial in there for you. I was listening to Bill Clinton's audiobook, which is out now, and he mentioned something in there about the median of something. And from our math class, you remember the median is half of that is lower than that number, and the other half is higher than that number. And the median value of a home was about $79,000. And the Dow ended the year at 2,633. We're still up above 44,000. But back then it was 2633. And I did see a YouTube video. It was not one of yours, but another old one, 1966. They were in Times Square for New Year's and the ball dropped. And the guy on there said, "Oh, 1966, what a year. And the Dow just hit 1,000. So really? Back then, so just 1,000. Look where we are now. Anything of home values and the Dow that sparks your memories?
Ralph, I bought my first home in 1987, and I paid $77,000 for it, just a little bit less than that median price that you talk about. It was brand spanking new. Actually, it was custom built, $77,000. And, the home I live in today, well, I don't know what it's worth, but there's 2 commas in the number. So, $77,000 won't buy you very much anymore. And so that's just the way life is. And imagine what it's going to be like in another 20 or 30 years for your kids and grandkids. I'm going to give you a little insight coming out of that conversation, Ralph, about why you don't want to deal with a young financial advisor. So when I first started in the financial advice business, you mentioned there that you could get a CD in 1990 paying an 8% interest rate. That's outrageously good, by the way. When I first started in the business 32 years ago, you could get a United States Treasury bond for 30 years paying 8%.
8.
And we just glossed over those, didn't pay any attention to them because we wanted people to own mutual funds instead, because we'd been taught that was what you ought to do from the people who were teaching us to sell. Not to consult, not to plan, but to sell. And so we bypassed those 8% Treasury bonds in favor of a mutual fund that was supposed to do better. And then shortly after that, we entered into that 3-year negative market where we lost 40-some%. In 2008, we lost another 40-some%. What I realized 15 years later was, oh my goodness, I should have been telling everybody just buy 8% United States 30-year Treasury bonds and be happy. They would have been a lot better off. But you know what? I was really young, and I didn't know enough to give them that advice. Let me just tell you from the old guy today, if we ever see 8% Treasury bonds again, pretty good chance Barry will be loading up on them, and he'll probably be advising you to do the same.
And the other kind of CDs, Barry, the CDs you listen to on the music, those are about $12 or $15, and we don't really buy those anymore. I think, you can still play them in your car, but everybody's streaming and downloading, and I don't know what that costs. I'm too old to do that stuff, but CDs were around $15 for a really good one. Here's some more. Let me give you another number, by the way. Barry's number, as you're listening to our show, call Barry, text the word visit today or call tomorrow. 417-200-3500 in Springfield for the Wealth Care Corporation. In that world of retirement planning, Barry, were you in that world in 1990 at all? You mentioned pastoring.
No.
Had you started financial planning just yet?
No, I came into the industry in 94.
94, a few years later. So as Barry was learning and getting into the trade, in the world of retirement planning in 1990, the average check for Social Security benefits was about $550. The number of retirement plans with a 401k, pretty solid, over 97,000, almost 98,000 plans with that feature. And nearly 20 million people were part of 401k plans in 1990 with assets of around $385 billion. So that was blowing and going at that time.
Well, you said pretty solid, Ralph. I think pretty weak because in 1990, there were 97,000 people or 97,000 retirement plans that had 401ks in them. Today, there are over 700,000 retirement plans.
Yeah.
In 1990, 19 million people were participating in 401k plans. Today, over 75 million people participate. In 1990, there was $385 billion in 401k plans. Today, there's over $9 trillion in 401k plans. And by the way, That's why the government wants to tax those plans. That's where the opportunity is for the government. And if they did tax the plans at 30% across the board, well, that's still only $3 trillion, less than half of what the government spent last year. And Ralph, that's why we're in trouble. And though your Social Security check has grown from $1990 from $550 to the average check today is $1,783, can the government continue to allow those checks to grow with the cost of living? I don't think so. Not as we're doing things in the present way. So let me say this. You may not like Donald Trump or Elon Musk. You may not like Trump's personality, and I certainly get that. I think he can be an ass, quite frankly. But the discoveries that they are making at Doge are huge. And one of the truths is you can have a bad personality and still be a very good president. And I think Trump's doing a bang-up job. I have to tell you that. And so hopefully there's enough incentive in what they're discovering and enough willpower in a person with Trump's strengths that he can turn the government upside down and cause a solution to these problems to be developed. Because otherwise, 30 years from now, the conversation we're going to be having on this show is going to be terribly different and not in a positive way.
So stay tuned on the President Trump 2.0, the second term, and what will be happening with that. Every day, it's something new and different to ponder and consider. I'd mentioned I was listening to Bill Clinton's new book, and I'm also reading a biography of Donald Trump. I'm an equal opportunity reader of either party, Barry. And I got to mention around 1990, what was going on with him. A fascinating part of that. A lot of people were encouraging him to run for governor because of his name recognition, as he wasn't too sure he wanted to do that, whether it was big enough or not, or whether he really wanted to sink that much money into it. Now, it's way, way more than what was considered for a governor's race. But he said, on my name recognition, can you get me more stories in magazines and newspapers? He said at that time, that's where all the action is. Well, what about social media? I don't know anything about that. So that was a big change. I'm not into the online or social media. Can you get me an article in the paper or in the magazine that people are really reading? So I thought that was interesting, too, of Donald Trump back in the 80s and 90s before he started to reimagine and redevelop himself. So for the people who started their career or were solidly into it in the 90s and building their retirement savings and pension and 401k, Barry, let's close the show by what's some of your top advice for the people who are getting ready to transition into retirement in the Ozarks after they've been at it, let's say, 35 years?
Well, I think you should approach retirement strategically. And that means you don't just run up to the retirement date and jump off and say, okay, here I am. What do I do next? No, we plan for it. We strategize, we do an analysis, we figure out what our income is going to need to be. We check all of our income sources and we develop a retirement income plan that shows us what our income will be every year for the rest of our life between now and the time we die, and what our taxes will be every year for the rest of our life, and whether or not we can reduce those taxes as we go forward, hopefully getting ourselves to the 0% tax bracket. Let's use strategy. That's what we bring to the table at the Wealth Care Corporation is strategy. Strategy around income, strategy around taxes, and you can't have tax strategy until you first have tax analysis. We need to know what your tax bill is going to look like. And people just don't pay attention to that. And sometimes I can't get them motivated to care. I'm telling you, for the average person listening to us today, Ralph, it's worth six figures. The average person, probably 200,000 or 300,000, and any number of people who are listening to us, it may be worth well over $1 million to pay attention to your taxes going forward, $1 million over the rest of your lifetime. Wouldn't it be good if you had that $1 million to spend on your own long-term care or your own retirement pleasures, or to give to your kids? Or if you don't love your kids, give it to your favorite charity. Do something with it besides sending it to the people in Washington who, my goodness, look how they've been spending it. Just don't allow them to do that anymore. Let's stop that. So my advice to you is get a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you need to work with somebody who's a holistic planner. That's what we do at the Wealth Care Corporation. We'll be happy to help you if you'll just give us a call.
Gosh, friends, I hope you'll have the chance to meet with Barry and have your own hour with him. Barry, I always enjoy our hour together. And any final words of wisdom from the Watts man?
Yep. The number's 417-200-3500. You can text us and text the word visit, and we'll schedule you to come in and visit with us. One of our advisors will be happy to meet with you. Or you can text the word book, and we'll we'll mail to you a copy of our book. But you've got to start by opening up your phone and texting 417-200-3500.
Friends, we hope you've enjoyed our hour together. Get with you again next Sunday morning. For Barry Watts and the team at the Wealth Care Corporation, this is Ralph Hipp, and that's it for this weekend's Watts on Wealth.
Thank you for stopping by Watts on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. And join us again next week for Watts on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.